The sheets begin before the sky, their bright noise fills the air. A pigeon startles from the ledge, and soap runs cold and clear. You climb the last iron stair with me, the basket at your hip. Your hair already half come loose, 3 clothespins at your lip. The chimneys lean in summer haze, a whistle drifts from down below, and all the roofs are patched with wash that lifts and settles slow. You shake one tablecloth full wide, then laugh when it strikes my face, and smooth the sleeve of my blue shirt before you seek its place. One shirt in the wind, one shirt in the wind, blue among the white that morning on the line, caught by 2 small wooden pins, held where all the weather thins. And something in me there was pinned to time. One shirt in the wind, one shirt in the wind. The sheets go bright as chapel walls, the aprons bloom and sway. A baby cries 3 floors below, a radio starts to play. You stand on tiptoe for the far wire, I take the basket from your hand. You say, no, that one drips too much, and point me where to stand. Then with your wrist against my arm, you fasten down the cuff, as if the breeze might carry off what daily work makes up. It was no grand appointed hour, no vow beneath a tree, only a roof, a June white sky, and washing enough for 3. Yet even now the noon bell brings those linens back to mind. How lightly some hands hold a thing, and still can make it bind. One shirt in the wind, one shirt in the wind, blue among the white that morning on the line, caught by 2 small wooden pins, held where all the weather thins. And something in me there was pinned to time. One shirt in the wind, one shirt in the wind. By dusk the rooftop wires are bare, the basket hangs inside, but one spare pin kept in my coat has never left my side. The room was blue as folded silk, the pane kept one small star. A hush from tired twilight stayed about the things that are. My brushes waited in their jar, like guests who knew the hour. The floorboards held the night a while. The curtain breathed and bowed. Below, a magnolia moved so lightly in the air. Its fragrance climbed the narrow stair, as if to find me there. Then on the glass my silhouette grew pale and fine and thin, as though the morning entering had asked to be let in. Where the blue light went, something in me went also, not lost enough for grief to know. Where the blue light went, no footstep climbed the attic stair, no voice disturbed the room, yet every jar and silver tray seemed listening in the gloom. A teardrop gathered on the brush, then trembled into gleam. Not sorrow fit for any name, but sorrow near a dream. Outside the roofs were pearl and smoke, inside the canvas bare began to hold a little more than emptiness and air. No serenade came up the stair, no radiant summons shone, but when the first faint gold appeared, I felt less left alone. For some things do not come as joy, nor leave as sorrows do. They only lay a tender hand upon the heart, then move. Where the blue light went, something in me went also, not lost enough for grief to know. Where the blue light went, the star went out upon the pane, the blue withdrew at last. I set one quiet color down and let the shadow pass. Yet long after the room grew bright and common morning stirred, my heart kept listening to that hue, like half-remembered words.
The red
were brushed with rain and blue. One bell let go the air. The city, half in starlight now, lay folded everywhere. A woman left 2 stops ago. Her gloves were ivory pale. The door side shut, and all at once the car seemed made of hail. Not cold in truth, but clear and thin, as certain hours can be, when every pain returns your face more softly than the street. Then one small turn along the line brought shuttered shops in view, and all the old familiar blocks went strange and dear and true. After the last bell, the city keeps what day forgets. In rain, in wires, in silhouettes. After the last bell, the cobblestones below the glass gave back a broken gleam. A barber pole, a darkened stair, a sign cut through with steam. No voice called out, no footsteps stayed, no door was left ajar. Yet somehow every quiet thing seemed intimate and near. My hand moved once against the pane and left no mark to keep. The rain took hold of where it was and drew it into sleep. No serenade came down the street, no bright farewell was said. But when the tram light crossed my sleeve, I thought of words long dead, and how some loves do not depart with thunder, flame, or fall. They only learn to ride the dark and answer when you call. After the last bell, the city keeps what day forgets. In rain, in wires, in silhouettes. After the last bell, the final corner bent toward dawn, though dawn was still afar. One roof kept back a little light, one pane received one star. And long after the conductor passed, and long after the rails fell still, my heart went on through that blue hour, as if it sometimes will. The depot lamps came on at 6. The rails were black with shine, and every car along the shed held stillness in its line. You stood beside the workbench there, with grease upon punch cards clipped in little rows, the wire brush worn rough. A driver hung his cap and left, a cleaner swept the sand, and October through the open doors put cold into the hand. They brought the bells from car 16, from 12, from 23. You polished each with patient cloth till brass came up to see. But one small bell stayed dull and brown, set farther from the light. The bell from old McCall's front car, not rung since Tuesday night. Leave the trolley bell, leave it as it came. Some things should not shine too soon after losing name. Leave the trolley bell, no one had to know why one brass voice stayed quiet there, where all the others glowed. The foreman said the schedule changed, the south line needed 4. The clock above the token cage kept counting at the door. You wrapped the polished bells in cloth, then checked each painted tag. But when your fingers touched that one, they slowed around the rag. I watched you set it back again, not hidden, not displayed. A little weather left on brass, a little sorrow stayed. No picture stood beside his name, no flowers marked the rail. Only that unbrightened bell kept silence in detail. There are men a city loses between a corner and a stop, between a fare dropped in a box and rain along the shop. The timetable moves forward, the cars go out the same, but one hand may refuse the shine that hurries past a name. Leave the trolley bell, let the dark brass keep what the evening almost took, and no one had to speak. Leave the trolley bell, not ribbon, not farewell, only the sound it did not make, still ringing where it fell. At 7 cars went rolling out, their windows bright and long, and on the bench that quiet bell remembered all its song. The room was blue as folded silk, the pane kept one small star, tired twilight stayed about the things that are. My brushes waited in their jar, like guests who knew the hour. The floorboards held the last of night. The curtain bent and bowed. Below, a magnolia moved so lightly in the air. Its fragrance climbed the narrow stair, as if to find me there. Then on the glass my silhouette grew pale and fine and mild, as though the morning entering had asked to be let in. What the morning kept was not the star nor fading blue, but all the hush that led to you. What the morning kept. No footstep climbed the attic stair, no voice disturbed the room. Yet every jar and silver tray seemed listening in the gloom. A teardrop gathered on the brush, then trembled into gleam. Not sorrow fit for any name, but sorrow near a dream. Outside the roofs were pearl and smoke. Inside the canvas bare began to hold a little more than emptiness and air. No serenade came up the stair, no radiant summons shone. But when the first faint gold appeared, I felt less left alone. For some things do not come as joy, nor leave as sorrows do. They only lay a tender hand upon the heart, then move. What the morning kept was not the star nor fading blue, but all the hush that led to you. What the morning kept. The star went out upon the pane, the blue began to yield. I set one quiet color down, as though a vow were sealed. And long after the room grew bright and common day had stepped, something in me stayed listening still to what the morning kept. Twilight rested on the frames, the lamp rehearsed its gold. The phonograph with patient grace unfastened from the cold. You did not ask me for the dance. You only crossed the room and drew my chair a little back, as if to lift the gloom. The velvet curtains kept the rain, the grate kept back the blue, and every little thing we owned grew hushed to look at you. Then when your fingers touched my sleeve so lightly, with a sigh, the years we never thought to name went quiet by and by. The evening learned your name from how you moved, not what you said. From lamplight on your silvered head, the evening learned your name. The teacups had gone pale with steam. The embers breathed in red. You smiled and said, my darling heart, the way you always said. No miracle had crossed the rug, no bright occasion shone, unless one counts the tender grace of never being alone. Outside the cobblestones were dim and silvered by the rain. Inside one little waltz began and made us young again. No grand serenade came down the stair, no trumpet split the air. But when your hand enclosed my own, I felt how love lives there. Not in the blaze that startles youth, nor vows that bloom and burn, but in the hush a whole room keeps for those who still return. The evening learned your name from how you moved, not what you said. From lamplight on your silvered head, the evening learned your name. The record thinned to whispered dust, the fire withdrew to rose. Still starlight lay across the rug in little afterglows. And long after the last note passed, and long after the rain grew tame, my heart kept moving through that room where evening learned your name. Twilight leaned on window glass, the embers breathed below. A phonograph began a waltz in little turns and slow. The velvet chair was moved aside, the supper things were done, You crossed the rug in slippered grace when all the day had run. Your silhouette in lamplight gold came softly into mine, and all at once the humble room grew tender by design. Where the rug remembered our little waltz from long ago, and taught the quiet room to know. Where the rug remembered. You said, my darling, not too fast, so lightly with a smile, as if the years had only passed to bring us here a while. The phonograph gave out a sigh, the curtains held the blue, and every step across the floor felt old and somehow new. One thread of starlight touched the pane, one ember turned to gold. A reverie moved through the room, more dear for growing old. No serenade came through the street, no silver trumpet shone, only your hand within my sleeve when all the day was gone. And then I knew how love survives, not grand and not in flame, but in the way two faithful feet still answer to one name. Where the rug remembered our little waltz from long ago, and taught the quiet room to know. Where the rug remembered. The record thinned, the lamp burned low, the embers gave their hue. Still on the rug our last small turn looked young enough for two. One bell let go the air, the rails received the rain, a little wash of midnight blue moved down the window pane. A woman rose 2 stops before, her gloves were pale as cream. The door sighed wide, then softly shut, as in a narrow dream. Her footsteps crossed the little platform, then thinned upon the stone. once the empty car seemed larger and alone, not lonely in some tragic way, but tender, frail and true, as certain hours in cities are, when night looks back at you. Where the footsteps went, the hard wind listening after them, through rain, through rails, through midnight dim. Where the footsteps went, outside the cobblestones below, gave back a broken gleam, a barber pole without its turn, cut slowly through the steam. The tailor's window held dark suits like men who would not stir, and every street the tram passed by seemed keeping watch for her. My hand moved once against the glass and left no mark to stain. The weather found the place at once and drew it all away. No grand serenade found the street, no bright farewell was cast, only the hush that follows heals when something dear has passed. And I thought, some things do not leave with thunder, flame, or tears. They only turn one quiet corner and live for years and years. Where the footsteps went, the heart went listening after them, through rain, through rails, through midnight dim. Where the footsteps went, the final corner bent toward dawn, though dawn was still afar. One pane received a little rain, one roof received one star. And long after the conductor passed, and long after the bell was spent, my heart kept hearing through the dark, where the footsteps went. Evening settled on the frames, one lamp rehearsed its gold, the phonograph with patient grace unpinned the early cold. You did not ask me for the dance, you only crossed the room and smoothed the crease upon my sleeve, as if to mend the gloom. The velvet curtains held the rain, The hearth kept back the blue, and every little thing we owned fell hushed to look at you. Then your dear shoulder brushed my own so lightly, almost shy, and all the loud and foolish years went quiet by and by. When the room grew gold, the dark released its claim, and even time turned kind again. When the room grew gold, the teacups had gone pale with steam, the embers breathed in red. You smiled the way you once had smiled, before a word was said. No miracle had entered there, no splendor asked to be, unless one counts the homely grace of your still knowing me. Outside the rain ran dark and thin, and silvered down the glass. Inside, one small obedient waltz made all the old hours pass. No serenade came down the stair, no bright bouquet was thrown, but when you laid your cheek to mine, I knew I had come home. When the room grew gold, the dark released its claim, and even time turned kind again. When the room grew gold, the record thinned to dust and hush, the fire withdrew to rose. Still starlight lay across the rug in little afterglows, and long after the lamp burned small, and long after the weather rolled, my heart kept one last measure there. When the room grew gold, the elevator sighed below, the corridor wore gold, one lamp above the numbered doors kept midnight from the cold. I came up with my shoes in hand, to spare the carpet sound. The powder from the ladies' room still faintly lingered round. Your careful good night followed me more softly than before. I found my room and stopped with awe. The hush along the floor. I stood so still, the brass in hand, forgot what keys are for. The whole long hallway held its breath. The key grew warm. Below, a trumpet from the lounge came thinly through the wall. Somebody laughed, an ice pail rang, then nothing more at all. I thought perhaps I heard your step return, then lose its way, and all the little distance left grew tender in delay. I stood so still, the brass in hand, forgot what keys are for. The whole long hallway knew before. The key grew warm. Not heartbreak, no, nor anything the novels would have named. Only a lift beneath the ribs where almost love had lain. A hand once offered at the stair, a rap set right, a pause, and one unspoken thing that lived because it never was. I stood so still, the brass in hand, forgot what keys are for, till all the dark around my door became one quiet waiting shore. The key grew warm. At last I turned the little lock and let the lamplight in, but some small part of midnight stayed just where I had been. The bathhouse clock was losing heat. The lockers clanged below, and towels along the wooden rail grew darker in a row. You stood above the guarded sand with zinc along your cheek, a whistle resting at your throat, your shoes kicked from your feet, The children dug their castles low, the mother shook out sheets. A radio near the soda stand kept time in little beats. One boy in trunks of faded green went farther than he knew, past where the ropes drew silver lines. Across the afternoon you saw the shoulder of the tide before the rest could see, and raised one arm into the sun, as calm as it could be. No red flag yet, no red flag yet. Only your hand above the glare, where sea and sky had met. No red flag yet, but something in that sign made all the careless summer pause before it crossed the line. The boy turned back before you called. A gull cut hard and low. The sand slid warm around my shoes. The undertow pulled slow. You marked the hour in the book, then folded down the page, as if a life might pass through danger without learning its age. His father laughed and waved him in, too late to understand. You only watched the water once and brushed salt from your hand. I came to ask the closing time, or said that was my aim, but stayed beside the guard stand steps and could not leave the same. There are warnings never sounded, there are rescues no one names. A breath withheld, a glance made early, a hand that measures waves. And there are hearts that owe the day to something small and plain. Not thunder, not a shouted word, but care arriving sane. No red flag yet, no red flag yet. The folded cloth beside your chair had not been needed yet. No red flag yet, still I see it clear, how close the bright world came to harm, how quietly you were near. The beach lamps woke along the walk, the last bell thinned away, and by the logbook, clean and red, the folded warning stayed. The town had shut its porches down. The courthouse gave one chime, and in the little exchange room, the cords hung still as twine. She sat before the switchboard wall, with cotton at her wrist, a pencil by the message pad, her coffee gone to mist. The moths kept tapping at the shade, the fan turned slow and wide, and every sleeping house outside had wires at its side. Then one red lamp began to wink above the doctor's name. She lifted up the answering cord before the second flame. A woman's voice came thin with fear from 4 miles past the mill, and all the room around the board grew suddenly more still. Hold the line, hold the line. Nothing more than waiting there between one voice and time. Hold the line, small duty plain and true. Yet in her hands the darkened town had one way through. The doctor's bell rang twice, then 3, then stopped beneath the floor. She tried his sister's boarding room, then tried the back drugstore. No panic crossed her steady face, no word was spent too fast. She only looped the cloth-bound cord and made the silence last. The farmhouse breathed against her ear. A child coughed once, then cried. She said, "He's coming, keep the lamp," and set the jack beside. Outside the gravel road lay black, the moon was nearly gone, but still she kept that little light from being left alone. No one would see the way she sat with one hand near the board, or how a common copper thread could carry mercy toward. Some rooms are small enough to miss, some work leaves little sign, but life may hang for half a breath on who will hold the line. Hold the line, hold the line, till wheels are heard beyond the bridge, till fear has crossed its time. Hold the line, not bell nor hymn nor flame, only a woman keeping still beside a blinking name. At dawn the doctor called her back. The child had found his sleep. She wrote one note, then cleared the cord and let the morning keep. Below, the druggist draws the shade. The stair smells faint of snow. Upstairs, the little signal lamps begin their evening glow. The galoshes by the stove, leave commas on the floor, 3 folded slips lie face side down beside the wicket door. You sit before the walnut board with chords in black and red, 1 sleeve turned back above the wrist, 1 pencil at the ledge. The county bells come thin and quick. You answer without haste and fit 1 shining plug to 1 as neatly as to lace. I came to ask for Dexter 5, a simple call, no more, but heard you say, go on, she's there, and close the booth door. A mother from the Ridge Road line, a grocer by the square, someone whose voice kept breaking up because the snow was there. You held the circuit breathing soft while all the shops below went dark one after one along the street under the snow. The line stayed open, the line stayed open. Past the hour the druggist turned his window shade, till every far-off halting word found the ear for which it stirred, and no one had to leave the night half made. The line stayed open, the line stayed open. There are hands that carry parcels, there are hands that hem and mend, there are hands that keep a wire from breaking at the end. You never heard the whole of it, you never asked to know, yet something in the way you waited taught the voices how to go. The line stayed open, the line stayed open, long enough for 1 last yes and 1 more county name. And when at last you drew the cord, the room was only wood and board, but I had seen how kindness works without a sign or flame. The line stayed open, the line stayed open. You wound the fallen chords in loops, set both receivers down. The snow kept whitening at the curb, the clock hands crossed the town. I never placed my call that night, I stood until you rose, and all the way home every wire seemed humming through the snow. Twilight clung to window glass, the floorboards held the blue, a magnolia breathed below. The room was washed in dew. The canvas waited pale and still. The jars were lined in gray. No phonograph, no footstep yet. Only the edge of day. My silhouette beside the pane looked thinner than the night, as if one sigh could tilt the dark and let in tender light. Before the first brush, the whole hushed room began to glow with something only dawn could know. Before the first brush, a teardrop trembled near my hand, then vanished where it shone. The little saucer by the sink held one last star alone. I had no need of grander signs, no serenade above, for every jar and folded rag seemed full of waking love. The window glass turned warm with gold. The shadows lost their place. A reverie moved through the room and touched my lifted face. No masterpiece had yet begun. No color kissed the white, and still I felt the morning come like velvet over light. Then all at once I understood what quiet beauty does. It waits beside an ordinary thing and makes a world of us. Before the first brush, the whole hushed room began to glow with something only dawn could know. Before the first brush, at last I laid the color down. The blue gave way to gold. Still one small hush remained to bless the moment I could hold.